The interesting thing is this is the 175th anniversary of an extraordinary year in the life of our community. Incredible moment in Ottawa's history that we don't really know a lot about. And of course, it's a year in the life of a young Élisabeth Bruyère. In the summer of 1847, this small town, which was called Bytown, of about 5,000 people, welcomed thousands of Irish immigrants who were fleeing the famine in Ireland. It was the worst year of the famine. And of course, the refugees brought with them highly infectious typhus fever. And the community was totally unprepared. In fact, the whole country was unprepared to deal with this crisis. But into that situation, Élisabeth Bruyère stepped up with a small group of sisters in her community. So it's an extraordinary story about an epidemic, about refugee crisis, about healthcare workers that are overstretched. And so it resonates today. But interestingly enough, I had no idea how it was going to resonate when I started working on the book 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's like you wrote the script for 2022 through learning about that extraordinary time. And what a moment in history. We often say at Bruyère that, Mother Bruyère had her pandemic and now we have ours. And we've learned from her courageous, selfless leadership because, boy, to be a woman of her age in that era, to just go in full force in such a fearless way and such a rough and tumble time is just like extraordinary. And I really love the way you talk about Mother Bruyère and the sisters kind of answering the call, and how much that resonates, and now with, at the beginning of the pandemic with people banging pots and pans for healthcare workers and the love and support that was shared at this extraordinary time. I wanted just to kind of touch base and have you kind of tell a bit of the story of how they answered that call.
The sisters established a temporary hospital. They showed extraordinary courage and compassion and a lot of strength. Nobody in town would go near these refugees for fear of getting infected with the typhus. So the sisters had to go to the canal and meet the refugees getting off the barges. And Élisabeth Bruyère and a couple of young sisters would transport them themselves on wagons back to their facility on what is now Bruyère Street. So then they would wash them, shave them, delouse them, men, women, and children, feed them, care for them. And when a lot of them died, they had to prepare them for burial. And the sisters had to load the coffins onto wagons and transport them over to the graveyard. They had to do everything because nobody would touch them, even the Teamsters. So 531 patients were admitted into their small hospital that summer. 163 patients died. But in the town itself, over 400 died. And of the 24 sisters, 17 also caught the typhus fever, but fortunately none of them died. But then at the end of this terrible season, when they had emptied themselves, they'd given so much financially, they risked their lives. At the end of all that, the government basically threatened not to reimburse their costs.
Isn't that so reflective of like some things just don't change with respect to the kind of extraordinary efforts of it. They were really at the front line of healthcare, and you look at what's happened with our front line and how we know that our system is under extraordinary pressure, and we do need to bolster at every level, with supports and funding. So isn't it an interesting parallel, even from that perspective? And I actually got chills when I was reading the book about transporting people that were so ill, like to the hospital mother house, like to care for them. And to your point, like caring for the bodies after. And like just they were doing everything that an interdisciplinary healthcare team does today.
Her story illustrates really what faith in action looks like. And the amazing thing is that her legacy lives on today in everybody who works at Send me an email at michael@mcbain.ca.